Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining us this afternoon, we have Dan Morris, Global Head of Marketing Solutions at GTM at Databricks. We have Jon Morra, Chief AI Officer of Zefr, and Kashish Gupta, Co-founder and Co-CEO of Hightouch. We're here to discuss how Agentic AI is shifting from theory to practice, in which major enterprise function is first to be transformed. And that segment is marketing. Today's panel will unpack from each panelist's unique perspective on why that is the area within the enterprise and how it's being transformed. It's great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Jon, let's kick this off at a high level and explain what agentic AI is. We hear about it so much. What does it actually mean for the business?
Yeah, first, thanks so much for having me. Agentic AI is basically the use of large language models, or LLMs, in order to generate text combined with tools. So a real simple example is a tool might be, what's the weather today in New York City? And so the LLM would, instead of knowing the weather, because it was trained in the past, it would ask the tool, give me the weather now, and it would craft the response really simply to the user. So it's just a combination of LLMs and tools. Another simple example is ChatGPT. It uses the internet search as a tool, right? So those are both examples of agentic AI.
Yeah. And Dan, it's interesting that marketing is really the first segment to be transformed within the enterprise. You would think it would go to more tech adjacent business. So explain to us why marketing really is on the frontier of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So also thank you for having us. I think there's really three reasons. So, one, when we think about marketing, it's very much built on these complex and multi-step workflows. So you have these steps that are pretty consistent, but the actions that you need to take are pretty dynamic and context dependent, which is pretty perfect for agents. Second is inherently goal driven, right? So whether you're trying to drive demand or increase conversion, you have these very specific goals that you're working towards. And while the day-to-day decisions are somewhat fluid, the goals are well defined, and agents happen to work very, very well in those types of contexts. And then lastly, marketing is very directly measurable and tied to revenue, which is, a perfect opportunity when you bring these all together that really puts marketing at the frontier and a core focus area for companies.
Yeah. And Kashish, is this because agents are able to think more dynamically, to Dan's point, versus the way a human might be able to process, one or two different tasks at a time?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few reasons. Some examples include when we want to look at our marketing, we don't ask questions simply like, how did this exact campaign perform? We ask topic-related questions, right? So how did our sports campaigns perform versus our fashion campaigns? And those are not always tagged. So LLMs have this unique capability where they can watch all of your marketing and find the patterns between that marketing, even if it's a video. So it can find the pattern between one video and another video and actually figure out, why did this resonate with a specific subset of your customers? And there's all these different superhuman capabilities of AI that we did not have prior to 2 years ago, that now marketers are starting to leverage. Another example includes content gen. So we see folks that typically would have maybe run one campaign a week or one campaign a month, now starting to run 100 campaigns a week or 100 campaigns a month. And it's because they no longer have to go through the week-long processes of designing campaigns when AI can co-pilot and help them design those campaigns together.
Yeah. So Dan, it sounds as if you have two different things going on here. So you have your marketer facing and you have your customer facing. And these are how these agents are interacting with both audiences.
Exactly. So typically when we look at AI, we've mostly seen marketer-facing AI. So the marketer logs in, they talk to the AI, and they, with the AI, maybe strategize a campaign, ideate on which campaigns might be good, learn about their customer via data, or build email campaigns and content for marketing. That's usually marketer-facing, and it's usually human in the loop. Then what's, I think, pretty untapped and really exciting is when AI actually becomes customer-facing. So what if the email campaigns that you are receiving from your top brands were actually almost predominantly LLM informed or AI informed versus human marketer informed? Or another example could include, what if the average experience that you had with a brand was talking to an AI rather than an in-store associate? So to go to a Nike store today, you'd have to go talk to someone in person in order to learn about which shoes are good for certain sports. That experience actually could be an AI experience online. But that's something that we as technologists still have to build for the customer-facing experience.
Yeah. And Dan, I want to talk about the foundation of data here for a moment, because with marketing of all functions, you are dealing with demographics. So data in, data out is going to be key to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things when we think about these types of applications, whether it's for marketing or external, is really making sure that you're grounding it in the context of your business. And so it's super critical to really unify your data and your AI so that you're providing the right context to the AI to reason over. So going back to the use cases that Kashish mentioned, you're going to ask these, AI about different questions you might have related to your marketing campaigns, for example. You want to make sure that those answers are 100% grounded in the context of your business and exactly what you as a company do.
Yeah. And John, let's explore this further because you have a couple things here. You have your internal facing, your marketers, then you have your customer facing, which is your external audience. And I think this is why these guardrails are key.
Yeah. So what we do at Zephyr is we do a lot of guardrails. So our customers are large brands, and what we do is we provide a product called brand safety, which is just is my ad showing up in the right context on the internet? In order to do that, we have to understand what that context is. So we spend a lot of time codifying exactly what it is. An example I love to give is some of our customers said they don't want to be around crime videos on YouTube. Well, is somebody committing a crime in a Grand Theft Auto video considered crime? Maybe, and it's not up to the LLM to decide that. It's up to the marketer, or the brand in our case, to decide that. And so what we do is we have agents that go out and comb the world and basically ingest a bunch of news sources in order to inform our brand clients on what is happening in real time so that we can help manipulate these guardrails fast and we can make sure that they stay safe even as the world changes in a fast rate.
Yeah. But John, will there always be a human in the loop here? Let's call it content moderation for lack of a better term.
I think that there will be, and the reason is because the human needs to define exactly what they're trying to do, right? The AI, if you leave the AI and ask it very generic questions like, is this good for my brand? It's going to internalize its personal definition of what the brand is and not what you want. And so what this does is it leads to inconsistent understanding of what the brand wants. What we found in our expertise is actually writing more policy and being more specific about what you want is an inhuman endeavor because that's providing the right context to the LLM so that it can perform the way you want it to.
Yeah. So, Kashish, it uncovers opportunities that perhaps a human may not have identified, but still, agents can't yet replace the dynamic market, the dynamic nature of the marketplace and how humans are able to adjust this.
Totally agree. And really agree with what Dan and John are saying as well. A lot of agents are making humans better at their job, and empowering us to do much more than we could do before. Right. So even in my own work, asking a question about customer data might have taken me hours or weeks to get a response. I can now do that like 5 times a day, 10 times a day. So really there to empower and make us better at our own jobs. One thing I'll add, that Dan kind of touched on was each business has their own unique context. So ChatGPT, they have the public internet, right? And everyone has the same ChatGPT as each other. John used this term called tools. Well, tools are different in each enterprise. So for one brand, it might be their inventory, their e-commerce website, and their database like Databricks. For a different brand, it might be a whole different set of tools, but those tools access the unique data for that unique brand. And how my business might work might be very different than John's, might be very different than Dan's, but the logical unit of intelligence is still the AI that is still able to operate against all these different data sets. And so I think that's like what like all three of us are spending a lot of time doing. It's helping enterprise figure out how can I take my vast amounts of data, content, creative, historical performance, and turn that into something that AI can then actually read from and make useful to the masses of employees that we have.
Yeah. And Dan, does that help to lend to the security side of data versus, accessing or trying to do marketing from something that's open, such as a chat GPT?
Yes, absolutely. So that's where, we see companies again really unifying your data, your AI, your governance model. A great example actually that kind of plays into this is you have security in one context of making sure your data is secure, and that's a super important topic. The second piece is making sure that people have they're only able to access the information that they should be able to access. And so going back to unifying your data and your AI, if you specify who can access what data within your data platform, you can then make sure that whatever information is fed to an agent to reason over is only the information that they're able to access. So an HR chatbot is a perfect example of that, where you want to make sure that specific people have access to only specific information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John, too, it also helps to mitigate the risk of inadvertently putting something that's proprietary or highly classified into the public domain. It doesn't have to be malintent. It could be a mistake, but this helps to mitigate that if you're working specifically within the confines of the business.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize too that ChatGPT and Gemini from Google, and Claude's Anthropic, they're all private companies, right? And so depending on the specific legal agreement you have with them, they may be allowed to use your data for whatever purposes they want. Now, there is a whole burgeoning open source area as well where people can download and host their own models, and that really does help with the security concern if you're in a highly regulated area. But there's also agreements that you can get with the providers so that they are not legally allowed to do those things.
Yeah, because you're starting to see it on many social media platforms as well, where they're updating their privacy agreements to let users know that they're training their LLMs based on what you're sharing on their platforms. And sometimes that could be a subtle privacy update. So I think it's also, a public service announcement to listeners today that you have to be careful and understand as much as it's digestible how your data is being used to train these models.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not careful with that, what's going to happen is you're going to accidentally put financial data or other sensitive data in, and pick your company is now going to have access to that.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, you put pictures on there and then you have all the biometric data that is
hmm
available. I mean, even though platforms are for free, they're not always for free. So I think it drives the point home why these business-centric platforms really do protect the enterprise at the end of the day. Dan, beyond marketing, where do you see other use cases emerging?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say customer experience more broadly is an area we see a lot of traction. So conversational search is a very big one, right? So instead of typing in keywords and hoping that you get the results that you want, instead you actually, express what it is you want, and the agents will understand your intent and retrieve the information that is relevant to you. So we're seeing a lot of opportunity there. You're also seeing commerce and support agents to able to streamline, especially within the communication space. And then I would say, also kind of important, a little bit adjacent is you see a lot around answer engines, right? So we're talking about ChatGPT, Perplexity. They're able to give you instant answers to your questions. And so now we need to think about how do we make sure we surface our information as businesses properly so that our information is presented in the way that we want in an environment that's not necessarily in our direct control.
Yeah. And Kashish, also the same question of you as well, where whether it's internal or external applications, where do you see it evolving beyond marketing?
Yeah, I think very similar on the customer experience side. Marketing is what, right? It's all communications that we have with our customer and all places where they see our brand. We've seen companies now kind of unify that in their digital experience as well as in-store experience. So you might have the employees with a tablet, and that employee now gets to see all your past like transaction history, what kind of home improvements you're doing, and they actually know about you before you walk in. For example, we see companies like Lowe's, they built an assistant that actually has now understood all of their different inventory and home improvement projects that you can build. And it helps that in-store associate do a much better job of being able to help you with your next home improvement. And so the same way we talk about augmenting our marketers, you might want to augment your in-store associates or the customer support associates. And so like I think like this whole narrative of like AI as labor replacement, I think kind of contradicts what we see in practice a lot of times, which is as labor augmentation.
Yeah.
And so can those folks get much more information, much more easily accessible, and actually get better at their jobs too, because of AI? One more thing I want to state really quickly, because we've kind of touched on it, is a lot of enterprises are scared of AI for the security reasons that we mentioned.
Mhm.
But that's actually why companies like John's and Dan's exist, because they give you safe patterns for using AI. So while it is totally possible to accidentally show AI all your information, if you use like best practices,
Right.
it's actually not terribly difficult to keep your data safeguarded from AI,
Yeah.
and in your own like kind of like walled area. So I just wanted to say that like we don't want to cause fear in the market towards AI. We would say actually like given the best practices that are like quickly evolving, you should be able to use enterprise pretty safely in the AI in the enterprise, but only if like kind of you have the right setup and the right awareness, Jill, as you mentioned, for what you're signing up for.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. And John, to wrap up here at the end of the day, migrating to the cloud 5, 6 years ago was really the enterprise initiative, and businesses have learned to manage and adapt to that. And this will eventually be the same thing that they'll adapt to when we think back 4 or 5 years from now. I mean, it's necessary. It's going to be a competitive advantage at the end of the day.
Oh, if you're not using AI regularly as part of your job, you're going to start falling behind, right? There's the classic AI is not going to replace you. Somebody who uses AI is, right? And that's more true now than ever. So it's not, yeah, I agree with Kashish. We don't want to stoke fear around using AI, but it is a tool that has, great power. And so you need to have that responsibility. We use it all the time across, creating content, creating code, creating, these policies. And it's a very regular part of my and my whole team's workday.
Yeah, it certainly is. It has improved efficiencies, that's for sure. Appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Bye.